You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
Folks, your host here for another morning show. It's Friday. What time? What is it? I was going to say December. It's January 22nd. I'm getting to that. Once you get out of the social media thing, I've stopped Twitter, and just start living life, you lose track of time. I've been working on my inside garden, on my back porch, closet. I always start too early, and I'm growing the seedlings and tomato plants are already up, a foot and a half. I don't know what I'm going to do because we're just hitting I got 2 months of, cold weather. But what I wanted to talk about today are two topics that I've touched on in previous videos. It's early in the morning right now. I got up today at like 3 o'clock. I laid in bed till about 4:30 or so. I've been downstairs since 5. And, of course I went to bed early, but still, you know that feeling you have when you just it's almost like a hangover, but it's not, you're just not fully awake. Sorry for all the moving around. I am definitely going to be getting another chair if they decide to send us out our free $1,400. I really don't care about that, as I said before, because the way that the central bankers and the Fed in this country are buying treasuries and using blockchain digital technology to just create ledgers in the cloud of money, loaning it to banks overnight, next to 0% interest. In other words, a lot of the traditionalists just can't. People who believed in the balanced budget can't understand that the central banks globally have distorted monetary policy so much that money is just simply isn't money anymore. It's just numbers numbers in the cloud on a digital ledger, and there is no reckoning. You see. And it's too complex. I could spend an entire video on that, and I'm not going to. And I'm sure that any economists out there have, strong arguments against what I'm saying. But it's like Occam's razor. The most simplest explanation is usually the way it is. The fact of the matter is, they can create all the money they want. Listen to that road rally outside my front window, 6:30 in the morning. It's insane. It's 25 mile an hour speed limit in a neighborhood. It's crazy. That's the kind of stuff that you pay taxes for. If there's anything you want the government to do, is you want the government to basically deal with stuff like that. Your roads, neighborhoods, crime, things like that. Isn't that what we pay taxes for? We don't really pay taxes for whatever this hogwash is. But what I want to talk about today is, and get into a little more detail from previous talks regarding this entrance back into the Paris Accord and the idea of climate crisis, climate change, as opposed to global warming. Now, I'm not going to put up a lot of charts and statistics because they're widely available on the internet for anyone who seriously wants to look at it. Adapt 230, I believe, is a good site that and a YouTube channel that gets into it very in-depthly. But the idea is that our climate is primarily caused. There are two or three factors that cause the Earth's climate to ebb and flow from ice ages to periods like we've had recently. And when I say recently, I mean while humans have been able to flourish on the Earth. Because our planet, for the most part, has mostly been frozen, a frozen wasteland. We have more ice ages than we do these short bits of time between when we tend to populate. So the idea of global warming is kind of an interesting term because it's the Earth has global warming in between ice ages. We're actually will be heading into another ice age. That's the natural cycle of the Earth. And the cycle of the Earth is dependent upon the cycles of the sun and magnetic fields that are also affected by the sun. So the sun causes the weather and, in a larger scale, the climate and the axial tilt, where the Earth is at a particular time throughout what we call even 26,000 year cycles, 12,000 year cycles, things of that nature. So it's funny, in the 70s, on the cover of when they used to have magazines, they were pushing the ice age, the coming ice age. That was the whole thing. So it's funny how they go from, decades ago giving us the fear mongering that by this time we would have already been frozen, to where a couple decades ago Al Gore was saying, we would be, baking. Well, there's, snow in the deserts right now, snow in the Middle East, horrible winters in Europe, across Europe. It's cold. It's even cooled down into Florida's even had a lot of cool weather this year. But again, one season doesn't make a trend. You have to look at the bigger picture and the longer scale pictures. And when you look at the cycles over periods as small as 400 years up to like I say, 6,000, 12,000, and then even hundreds of thousands of years, and then over millions of years. The Earth is 4.5 billion years old. Now that's incomprehensible to the average person. 4.5 billion years. Just like 1,000 years is almost incomprehensible to most people. Human lifespan is somewhere between the late 70s and into the low 100s. So we can comprehend a century, a couple of centuries, and we could comprehend maybe a couple thousand years because of history, the Roman Empire, and then before that, whatever, and people could get into biblical things, and of course, those who study this can go back to Göbekli Tepe and Sumerian cultures and see this in the Younger Dryas period, and look back, like, say, between that period of 12,000 years, the last time there was an Earth catastrophe. So the idea that there's a newfound obsession, led by government, which is basically the people's tax money, to do things to try to prevent something. I mean, the Earth, I'll post a picture of it. The size of the Earth compared to the sun. The idea that we think we have we are but a speck compared to the size of the sun and the power of the sun. And at any given moment, and what some have predicted, that on a 12,000-year cycle, the sun will actually shed its outer shell, have a micronova of sorts, and will actually there'll be an Earth catastrophe. So that's sometime between now and in the mid 2040s. That's expected to happen. I gotta adjust this chair again. Sorry about that. It's an older chair and it just keeps sliding down, and I can never get comfortable here. I promise I will. If I keep doing these things, I will solve this problem. There's my on-air sign. 21st century beat poet, it says up there at the top. So, I don't know, how's that? See my book Codex there in the background. So anyway, that's a reality. So I wanted to get into stressing this for someone who's never seen these videos, and I have very low viewership because they throttle me. It's called shadow banning. There's a million different words for it, but these videos don't necessarily get viewed by a lot of people. And if people tune in, they probably have already tuned out because you get slow starting and there's not enough, it's not action packed enough or whatever. Or they look at my face or whatever and they say, I don't know, who's the guy with the Hawaiian shirt on? Let's see if we can get Hawaii on here. I've been to Hawaii a couple of times. I always found it to be very humid there. And every time I've gone, I was on my way to Southeast Asia, places like Antarctica. And Southeast Asia, like Australia too. But and just held over there and weekend or spent some days there, just driving around the island, big island. But be that as it may. And the tuning in here is this is me. This is my story. So, but I wanted to stress. I want to really stress something so that this video isn't about everything else. It just focuses on this idea of how the Paris Accord and what people are calling a climate crisis, like that Greta, whatever woman who's masquerading as a child, actress from an actress family that's reading these scripts, scaring the crap out of little kids and others that just fall hook, line, and sinker for this stuff. News junkies that watch, TV. I no longer, again, like I said, I canceled I had DirecTV. That was my TV service, canceled it. I stopped posting and commenting on Twitter several days ago. I quit Facebook, stopped that several years ago. So I'm removed from that because, as we know, we live in a digital age and it's so easy to get information. And if anything important happens, you can go right to the source. And a guy like me who's interested in science, technology, the arts and stuff like that, I know where to go to find out what's happening. I don't need a second or third party to try to feed me something. If I want to know what's happening with a storm, I go to the NOAA's actual satellite maps so I can see the path of the hurricane. I don't need it interpreted by the Weather Channel or somebody else. If I want to know anything about the sun activities, is there going to be a CME, a solar flare, some sort of uptick in solar flux, magnetic field, that sort of thing, I can go right to the source and see we have these probes, satellites, whatever you want to call them, that are looking at the sun 24/7 basically from different angles and things. So I don't need someone else to tell me that. If there's an earthquake, I can go to the USGS site and in live see if there's an earthquake. And then I can also go to another site where I can see the buoys that we have in the ocean to see if there's a tsunami or something like that. And the temperature of the oceans, because I could find that direct. And so I find it quite amusing, that people allow themselves to just take this second, third hand, and when it comes to social media, sometimes, a meme or a video or something that's been, posted, retweeted, or whatever, hundreds, if not thousands of times. When they say something goes viral and 1 million views or something, it's like it's gone through so many hands in so many places that you don't know, and whatever comment is right below it or something, people fall for that kind of thing, or people steal your memes or other people's memes, and they add or subtract to it in some way, and it's craziness. So go to the source. This is just a quick aside to find out what you want. You have the internet. You turn it on. A lot of people don't know how to use their browser, and even have apps. If you're one of those phone people, I never really got into the smartphone concept, as like using it for anything more than a phone, and to get email. If I was somewhere outside of away from my desktop. I'm a desktop person. I have a laptop. I have several computers, but I'm a desktop person. And I have a smartphone, but like I said, it's a phone. I use it as a phone. But for people who are live within those things, they have apps, so you can check these kinds of things. But let's back to climate. The Earth is not heating up because of CO2. The Earth is a very green planet. It's a water planet primarily, but it's also a very green planet. And the green growth, which is our food source, requires both sunlight, intense sunlight, and CO2. And then it gives off oxygen, which we need for ourselves. We also, UV rays also give us vitamin D, which is essential for our immune system. So, apologize for this. Like I said, I'm not going to edit this out. It's early in the morning. My eyes are a little itchy. I'm wearing glasses so I can see what the heck I'm doing. And I've got geek glasses, so I've got to tape these things. Because of this lockdown, I can't get to I need to get a glasses, prescription. I need an eye test, and it's that's one of the worst things about this lockdown. It's you can't go to a dentist. I've been using something called xylitol toothpaste, and xylitol gum even, which supposedly, and knock on wood, is helps with the rebuilding cavities. I see my teeth are even very white. I still smoke cigars occasionally. I'll be smoking them today. I'm having happy hours this afternoon. I would do that, not every Friday, but a couple times a month. I'll smoke a couple of cigars. But anyway, this xylitol. Look, I'm no nutritionist. I'm no doctor. I'm not recommending you do it. But I've found that computer zonked out again because I wasn't using the mouse. So, but I found that's help. And when I do get a tooth pain, because I need some fillings, I got some fillings that fell out. I mean, I could actually. I don't know if I can hold this up. It may seem tiny, but you see that thing? Look at that. That's like a metal filling from when I was a kid. That actually fell. See how that's fairly big. So that fell out of my mouth. Believe that? But to go to a dentist, it's like they don't want to see you. The dentist closest to me was like, "We're not taking any new patients now." And then when I went to a dentist, I actually had a tooth removed over here, which I would prefer to have perhaps saved. But the only place I could get an appointment with was orthodontist, surgeon, whatever. I don't even know. Anyway, a dentist that just does tooth extractions. He doesn't do fillings. Well, before I could even see him, I had to go get a COVID-19 test, which I tested negative. But that delayed that so much, a few days, which was kind of absurdity because I got the test on a Thursday or Friday, and the appointment wasn't until Monday. So how did they, they go in there and say, well, have you been around anybody and blah, blah, blah. It's like, how do they know? But anyway, yanked the tooth out. So these are the kind of things. And there's people not getting cancer screenings and all sorts of other things that they should be doing because of the fear of germs, right? And like I said before, the sun, it gives you your immune system, vitamin D. And in the wintertime, if you're in the northern latitudes, take vitamin D3, zinc, eat healthy, cruciferous vegetables, things like broccoli and stuff like that. Eat just a balanced diet, and that's another good thing about the internet. You could, any of these things you could look up. Just like type in immune boosting foods, and you'll see a list of them. And if you don't trust one site, go to 7 and do what I do, make a list and see what the commonality is. That's the best way of doing your own, study, is that, it's like sourcing information. If you hear a story, don't just take it on face value, and don't just go somewhere else where the same story might be. If it's something that concerns you, go to 5 or 6 or 7 places, and then it average them out and say, okay, well, it looks like 6 out of 7 or 9 out of 10 people are saying, hey, that seems real. Well, in the case of climate change, it's not like that. This has been debunked well over a decade and a half ago. There's not 99% of scientists. That was like totally debunked. The majority of scientists now realize, climate scientists, they're not people who are paid, get money from governments to promote this basically carbon tax. So that's the reality of it. The reason it's cool at night when the sun is down or on the other side of the planet is because the sun gives us our heat. I mean, like I say, Occam's razor. Think about it. So that's it. The reason it's hotter in the summertime and you get a sunburn, a suntan, is because, the Earth is closer, angled wherever you happen to be geographically located towards the sun. And that's why it's hotter. And then there are cyclical things. There's axial tilt. There's what they call precession. And there's all sorts of factors that aren't really being taught to people in schools, let alone the news media going over. They're just saying, oh, CO2 in the atmosphere. More CO2 to better. More CO2 to better. Hey, I'm against smog and pollution and all that stuff. But that's a whole different story. And they mix that together. So that brings us to infrastructure repair and the current discussions on that. We're going to create all kinds of jobs in the U.S. because we've got all these bridges that, thousands of bridges, maybe 10,000 bridges that are about to fall and collapse. We've got roads that are in really bad shape. Buildings crumbling. But when they talk about infrastructure, it's also underneath the ground. Gas lines, water pipes, sewer lines, all this stuff all over the country, crisscrossing everywhere. Things that are well over 100 years old, these things were put under the ground. That's infrastructure. Now, how do you dig down through asphalt or concrete to replace a gas line, water line, say some kind of conduit structure for electric lines, and big giant sewer lines? How do you do that? You use what's called heavy equipment. Things like I've talked about before, excavators, these jackhammer type. The jackhammers now aren't so much a guy with the jackhammer as they've got jackhammers on the ends of these excavating machines. Bulldozers, large dump trucks, cranes to lift things, all that stuff. Even in a smaller size, things like one of the most common things, skid steers. Now, the average person doesn't know anything about that, because if you're not exposed, if you've never seen those equipment, if you don't know you're simply not aware of what they do. There's a guy named Andrew Camarata has a YouTube channel, and it's basically it's him doing jobs like fixing roads, digging ditches, and stuff like that. It's like one of those things you can just pass the time for half hour or an hour watching him, like, dig up stumps with this heavy equipment, dig some kind of drainage ditch, and then put a road, then bring a giant truck of gravel and put it down, and that kind of thing. Well, anyway, and then of course you've got the machines that are going to be used to relay, the road. Once they do all this digging with the heavy equipment, then you've got to have things that lay the asphalt or concrete down and that sort of thing. And then steamrollers, all kinds of weird devices. So they all run on like diesel. We're a carbon-based society. And as I've said many times before, but I'm focusing strictly on this video, even things like fire trucks in every city in America, those are huge, huge vehicles. Very heavy. All right? Same with ambulances. They're very heavy machines, vehicles. And they require what people call fossil fuels, petroleum-based, and so you can't run them on electric. And no Elon Musk Tesla factory is going to be able to do that. Okay, it's just not. They're feeding you a lie and a line, and so the paradox, or just the outright lie, is that by rejoining the Paris Accord and pledging to be what they call carbon neutral, within 10, 20 years or something like that, is not realistic. At the same time, when you have a crumbling infrastructure and you've pledged to people that you're going to fix the infrastructure. Because if they were to actually fix the infrastructure, if we got involved in a massive infrastructure works program, it will require 10, 20 times the fossil fuels that we're using right now. Not less. Not like Biden said in his speech, well, we'll phase out of fossil. No, you wouldn't be phasing out if you're going to fix our infrastructure. You actually have to gear up. You're going to have to increase the output and use more of it. And I don't think somebody like AOC or Nancy Pelosi or these people pushing this stuff, and certainly those European bureaucrats that just want to get a tax from this, get U.S. tax money from it, they're clueless to that. I don't think they've ever seen an excavating machine or understand what it takes, a crane. They want to be saved. They want to live in these penthouse apartments, but there was a fire there. They don't want to have have a hook and ladder fire truck be able to have fuel to come up and put out the fire? It's like the defund the police thing. It's like these people, we got to just get rid of cops altogether and let 911 be answered by social workers. Yeah, until there's somebody breaking down your door, or you're in bed at night and downstairs you hear somebody rustling about, and you don't know if they have a gun, knife, or what they're doing. And you call 911 and there's a social worker there trying to say, well, be calm, and maybe it's just, maybe we could talk to the person. No. So these are unrealistic ideas. People who have not lived life, have not been exposed, they've been lived mollycoddled, they've lived sheltered lives, they haven't traveled, they haven't seen the planet, they haven't seen the earth. They haven't driven around cross country and into other countries and seen the vast forests, the greenery. Like I said in the beginning, between oceans and forests, that's like mostly what the planet Earth is. Mostly what planet Earth is. And if these people were really serious about doing good for the planet and the people, they would be like coming down hard on polluters that are dumping raw sewage or garbage and trash into the oceans. And people who are, and criminals and cartels and people that are doing us harm, humans harm and society's harm. So there is no way that the two things can coexist. You cannot have this climate crisis movement and save the infrastructure, which is falling. The infrastructure has to be fixed. So in other words, bridges will be falling right and left. They have been. They don't get reported much. Roads are failing. There's sinkholes all over the place. You have to go on YouTube or other places to see where people with their iPhones or whatever snap pictures of these things. Because unless you're in that local market and your local TV station talks about it. There's natural gas explosions all the time, which are basically caused by faulty gas lines and 100-year-old pipes. Electrical fires, sewage backups, all kinds of crazy stuff. Water, poor water because these pipes are so old, and they weren't even made from, the type of stainless steel or whatever, you know, they should have been. And, you know, and they're either corroded with things that are harmful, carcinogenic, whatever. So there's no doubt that our infrastructure is falling. And that's another reason why I say, you know, so the republic is falling, literally falling apart, and infrastructure needs to be repaired. But infrastructure is going to require an increase in the usage of fossil fuels. I mean, already people are buying, you know, hybrid cars and electric cars. You know, that's fine and dandy. I got rid of I don't even drive. My carbon footprint is nil, basically. You know, I grow my own food in my backyard. I live mostly off of stuff I grow myself, and I don't even drive a vehicle. So, you know, and I'm moving to. I use like a solar panel on my little mini greenhouse to run the fans to keep it from getting too hot in there, things like that. I've got solar lights in my backyard, you know, and on my front porch, you know, soak up the sun in the day or the light in the day, and at nighttime they come on. So it's like, it's not like I'm some guy saying, yeah, you know, gas guzzling, you know, use this stuff, blah blah blah. Technically, I'm very close to carbon neutral myself, and I'm certainly anti-pollution. I want fresh water, that's for sure, and I don't want to breathe in smog. So that's an important thing to note. I practice what I preach, but this is something that you've got to get through your head. That is the cold hard reality, that climate change is something that is cyclical, that happens due to forces that are completely, totally out of our control, and those pretending that they have any ability to change it are just handing you a line. This is bureaucratic bullshit. People that want to keep their jobs, get funding, grants, and have big nations taxed with carbon taxes, and somehow and legal maneuvering so that they can further get rid of the concept of nations, so that it move more towards this great reset globalist governance. So I just wanted to point that out. Think about that when you hear people talk about it, because I think in the coming months, because there already have been some instantly executive orders signed to go back into the Paris Accord, and Congress will be drafting and funding efforts for these climate policies that are just ridiculous. Excuse me. And there's nothing worse than if you've ever driven past these vast bird-killing windmill farms, or these big solar array places that just totally destroy the beautiful landscape, and that they themselves, their carbon footprint to create those things is far exceeds what you get from them, because they break down. They don't have a long life expectancy, and they require maintenance, and they're not being maintained. So and despite that, like even where I live, you know, there's so many of those things when I used to drive around, and that was a number of years ago. I would see so many of these things, but the electric bills went up. So that's another dead giveaway to the scam of it all. So you put in these windmills and solar farms, that were subsidized under the Obama administration on the tunes of like, each windmill was like $1 million tax break. And then the companies that ran them were also able to, when you have equipment or you put in a thing, you can depreciate it. So they virtually got these things almost built for free. It's kind of like pharmaceuticals. The universities, excuse me, it's very early in the morning, I can't talk. The universities, just a quick aside, universities get all this funding and grants to develop research and development on drugs. And then a pharmaceutical company comes in and patents that drug and then sells it to the general public for like $40 a pill or whatever. These are these scams, these games, head games they play that the media should be reporting on. In the old days, they used to report that stuff. Well, it's the same with all this, with the solar and the wind and the windmill deals. So these big energy conglomerates that trade on Wall Street, a lot of these things were built overseas too, by the way, with either Chinese or German parts. And are now falling apart because they've been up for so long and nobody wants to fix them. Nobody wants to claim ownership to them. They've already depreciated it, spent the money. They've been sold 1 million times over. Who knows even who owns them? All we know is that they're bird graveyards, and they catch fire, all kinds of crazy stuff that's just not being reported about them. And they destroy the once beautiful landscapes. They have to chop down the trees, the forest areas where they were, which eliminates things that would have, taken in the CO2 and given us oxygen. Like I say, if you really look into this, it's indefensible. There's no defense for this climate hoax and this Paris Accord. It is a scam. It's an absolute scam. We are a carbon-based society. We will be a carbon-based society for many, many, many decades. And the things that are being done now by companies where they're phasing in electric cars and solar panels and things like that, that natural flow is fine and will help or should help reduce our prices. But they never produce all this free energy they got from the wind and the sun because it was subsidized, so that it wasn't like the company saying, well, we got to raise your electric rate because we just put in 200 windmills or built this solar thing. Yeah, but the government subsidized it. What do you mean? So you're getting free energy because when the wind blows, all right, but now you're raising our electric rates? So that's, like I said, the level of scams, and I could litanize, this ad infinitum or ad nauseum, as they say. So, and the idea gets back to infrastructure. So no matter what happens, okay, so keep building windmills, keep building solar things, keep playing your game, join the Paris Accord, raise everybody's taxes so they could pay these carbon taxes to these European bureaucrats who run this globalist, the Davos set. Meanwhile, China just spews out, dirty coal, and India's trying, the two countries that both have over 1 billion people, between them have like 3 billion people and growing, right? That are not going to abide by this. Meanwhile, the U.S. only has like somewhere between 4 and 5% of the world population. In other words, 95% of the people on the planet Earth aren't U.S. citizens. I bet the average person doesn't even know that. Right? The U.S., it's like 5% of the population, world population, global population. And so we're supposed to, take care of the world? Nobody else is doing anything. And these countries like Canada and UK and stuff, they have small populations. So people say, oh, they got national health institutes there, they have national health care. Yeah, for like 30 or 60 million people. We got 330 million and maybe 350 million once they're going to naturalize or give citizenship to all these people that came in illegally over the past several decades. It's probably 350 million people. So we might have 300 million more people than the UK or Canada or something like that. So of course they could manage some national healthcare system because they don't have the number. We have just too many numbers. How do you deal with 300 million people? The system we have. You improve the system we have. You don't throw it into chaos. But this isn't about that. That's another story. So how no matter what you do with the Paris Accord, no matter what you do with this pretend climate crisis thing, you're still not going to be able to fix the bridges, roads, and what's buried underneath the ground, and fix buildings, build neighborhoods, maintain, have emergency vehicles, all the farming, massive farming so you can feed these 350 million people, where you need these huge machines that can't be run on electric. They require, carbon-based fuels, farm fuel. Oh, well, we can use the corn, we could make fuel from corn and stuff. No, we're going to need to eat that. The population is growing right now. So, that's like that's going to be a quick change on that thing. The fuel from farms those farms that are producing that to sell it as fuel, that ain't going to be happening much longer, because we're growing populations. We have 10 billion people in the coming decades. That's a lot of food that needs to be produced. And so the heartland, you can't afford to have fields producing, fuel, turning corn and things into fuel, when we need that food. We need those fields to be producing food to feed the people. So see, these are the absurdities. These are the paradoxes. These are the lies. These are the deceptions of the current times we live in. And the media and those like the globalists in this country and and abroad, these are the lies that they're feeding people, along with the fear-mongering where suddenly everyone's afraid of catching a cold. And instead of telling people how to boost their immune system, see, instead of them coming on with the Dr. Fauci type of guy who's telling you wear a mask, lockdown forever, and social distance forever, and this is the new normal. Why don't they bring on, have a press conference with nutritionists and doctors who basically can tell you things like oxygen levels in your blood, zinc, and getting ample sunshine, D3. Here's foods you can eat to boost your immune system. Why isn't the FDA forcing like DiGiorno pizza and McDonald's and Burger King and Kentucky Fried Chicken or whatever to maybe put in, fortify their foods with immune boosting vitamins and things? Do you see what I mean? If people were serious about any of this stuff, that's what they would be doing. Like I said, you wouldn't allow dumping of medical waste, sewage, and garbage in the oceans. And so instead of banning straws in California because they might get into a turtle or a bird, an OSHA sea creature, why don't you just stop? Why don't you just say, if you're caught dumping straws, a garbage company, waste management company is caught dumping in the ocean or in streams, you basically are going to lose your license and ability to do that. End of story. have a straw because, everything breaks down naturally. See, that's what I'm trying to say. Look through. Don't watch the news because they're filtering it with for sensationalism. All they want to do is scare you so you become addicted, a news junkie, and watch it. I just went on, I gotta say it. Why I quit Twitter? Because all these people, they just actually get off on it. It's these dopamine hits. It's the same story. It was over and over. It just repeated itself. It was like the Trump story. It was boring. It was boring. After a while, it was boring. I was watching Trump rallies last, fall. And it was like they call them stump speeches. And it was boring because it was the same. He was repeating the same old thing. And, and all politicians, that's what they do. It's common practice. And now they're bringing back this old stuff that Obama talked about, Clinton talked about before that. So 25, 30 years ago, they've been talking about this climate thing. And how, oh my God, by the year 2000, by the year 2010, the Arctic will be open, right? Well, it's 2021. The Arctic isn't open. Okay? Oh, but Antarctica is melting. No, it isn't. They found out that there's geothermal volcanic activity in the areas where there was some melting. No. You don't get it. So that's my little morning spiel for you. And I hope you have a great day and a great life. I hope you live like I do. Get yourself a cheap house in a decent place. Doesn't have to be a good neighborhood necessarily. Secure yourself, put a couple of cameras up, have a fence around it. Get a backyard where you got south-facing sun and grow some food, relax. Make sure your house is disconnected from the next one. So you can play your music loud, do whatever the heck you want to. Knock out a wall if you want to. And your rent, your mortgage, taxes, and insurance will be like anywhere from a quarter to 10 times less than you're paying in rent in the city or a mortgage in some idiotic place. It's my advice to you. Nice talking to you. This is our place now. Join, subscribe, like it, link up. I'll be doing this stuff fairly recently. Usually starts out slow, but it eventually makes sense by the time we get to the last 10 minutes. And don't forget, buy my books, listen to my music. These songs are great. I call it beat poetry, but it's different than, everything's in there. And I've got some cool t-shirts that got some good slogans on them, So do that stuff. Visit my site, rockflux.com, and there's links to all kinds of stuff there. So until the next time, have a great, wonderful day. I hope you're having happy hours. I am. It's so early in the morning. It's quite a few hours away, but I'll be enjoying it. I'll post a picture on my Instagram page. Take care.